What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Primarch Purpose. This is a series in which I go over my thoughts on what I think the purpose, ultimately, the end game goal for the Primarchs might have been if we didn't have the heresy. The Emperor created the Primarchs with specific goals in mind, hence the different Primarchs being altered in different ways. But we never really get to see what that would have been because the heresy happens, Primarchs died off, Primarchs went traitor, and so forth. It was a mess, right? And that's how we end up with 40k. So for this series, it's a bit of a what-if setting, right? So what-if setting because we're looking at an Imperial truce-driven Imperium with the Emperor leading it alive. So all the Primarchs are going to be loyal to the Emperor. It's an Imperial truce-driven Imperium. The legions are still legions led by their Primarchs. There's no ecclesiarchy. There's no Inquisition from 40k, so there's no Grey Knights and such. It's a different type of Inquisition. There is no ecclesiarchy because it's Imperial truth-driven, not God Emperor driven. So those are some pretty big changes for the Imperium. We still have plenty of Xenos threats. Basically, every Xenos codex is going to still be a thing in 40k. If this was the setting, we'd still have Tau somehow. They would have eked out in existence and become a threat. Necrons are still going to wake up. Tyrants are still going to show up, right? Eldar is still a thing. Orcs are still a thing, and so forth. Chaos is still a threat with their demons, corrupting mortal minds, corrupting Mechanicum to have Dark Mechanicum. Basically, we just don't have Chaos Space Marines. So everything else is still going to be a threat. There's still going to be plenty of strife in a Imperial truth-driven Imperium following a successful Great Crusade. It's not just humanity from one galaxy's edge to the other, full of peace and harmony. Still plenty of war to be had. But now we get to see Primarchs fulfilling the true role in which they perhaps were made. Now, you could argue, and it's true, that they were made to conquer the galaxy, to win the Great Crusade. But they have specializations that are going to be useful outside of the Great Crusade. We can see that inherent in some already just by looking at them, and I've done some rambles obviously before. So here we're going to be checking out the 14th Legion's Primarch, which is Mortarion. Now, Mortarion is pretty interesting. He was, again, one of the traitor Primarchs, but he's loyal here. So let's look at what his role would be as a loyal Primarch to the Emperor. Well, Mortarion leads the Death Guard, and the Death Guard are attrition warfare, but different from, for example, the Iron Warriors. The Iron Warriors is mathematical siegecraft, basically, right? Mortarion is resilience, relentlessness, endurance, and slow, inevitable crushing of the enemy. You know, much like death itself is inescapable, the Death Guard, when they're fighting you, it's inevitable they're going to overcome you through endurance, resilience, and so on and so forth, and just crush you to pieces. Now, we see the trademark resilience in Mortarion and his Death Guard, right? Part of their victory ritual is basically Mortarion has a cocktail of really dangerous poisons that he drinks, and he shares it with a notable commander for that particular mission or campaign. So if you do really well, you get to drink really toxic stuff with your Primarch. Awesome. And they survive it because that's what they do. It's their gene stuff. That's what the Primarch's about. That's what his gene seed does for the Death Guard. So they are really uncaring about death. You know, they can take the losses and keep on going, no worries. But they are remarkably resilient, so it's not really going to happen as often as you might think. And on top of that, they win the nitty-gritty award, right? The Primarch and his forces, their armor is not kept up to pretty standards. They are kept functional. Anything that impacts the functional nature of their equipment gets mended, repaired, overhauled. But it doesn't have to be shiny. It doesn't have to look good. It just has to function correctly. So their guns may look a little worse for wear, but in truth, they're all functioning flawlessly. They just don't care to give it a nice shiny emerald or polish it up. They just keep it oiled, keep it working, keep it serviceable. Same thing with their armor. They basically just rinse it off with a power washer real quick. Following a campaign, they get all the chunky stuff off of it. That's why it's always looking dirty and in use, because it is. Any scratches or dings stay. If it impacts the functionality of the power armor, if it's a potential weak point breach in the armor, it'll get fixed. But if it's not, whatever, basically, is how they go about it. And is that that viewpoint, that mindset of their own equipment, really kind of shows Mortarion's mindset in conducting warfare. As long as they kill the enemy, who cares? Whatever. And Mortarion is a master of really deadly warfare and things that are all sorts of breaches of the Geneva Convention if it existed in real life. He's a master of alchemical fire, atomic, and radiation weaponry. He's a master of all this baleful equipment, or baleful equipment, I should say, that some legions just refuse to use. Other legions use it. Right? There are other legions that use this equipment. Dark Angels with their Dreadwing, World Leaders make use of it. Even the Ultramarines will make use of it via Destroyer squads to a certain degree. But Mortarion is the undisputed master of this alchemical fire, baleful weaponry, and so forth, atomic weaponry, radiation stuff. He's the master of it. You could say he's the one pushing it forward. He's the one making breakthroughs in it, and he doesn't care about utilizing it at all. He'll utilize it no problem. Where other commanders don't want to utilize it. Now, the end goal of Great Crusade was to conquer planets, not destroy them. And you don't have to blow a planet apart to destroy it. If you saturate the ground and permeate the air with radiation and atomic chemical burns and phosphex and all that stuff, alchemical fire, and you taint the very ground of which you want to live on and make it inhospitable, you effectively destroyed a world. Maybe for centuries, millennia, maybe even longer, until the planet basically purges itself and gets better. So it is a bit of a dangerous sword to wield, but Mortarion wields it without fear, without problem, and is very expert at it. This also makes them really good at clearing out space station, colony ships, colonies, other big Space Hulk type stuff. If they got them on a craft world, it would be game over, right? Because they would just salt the craft world, basically. So they're really good at that. They're not, I wouldn't call them boarding experts like the Imperial Fits are for naval combat that way, but when it comes to purging out big battle stations and big space stations and the like, they can really bring their baleful weapon, alchemical deathcraft to bear, because it's going to be contained on that station, right? They can utterly wipe it out, make it absolutely inhospitable. They don't care. You can always just blow it up, whatever, get rid of it. Nobody needs to use it and get mission accomplished. So what does this mean for the purpose of Mortarion? Well, his purpose is to truly be one of those exterminatus level Primarchs, right? He is one of the horrors of war. You have Mortarion, Angron, and Perturbo are three good examples of different horrors of warfare. Chimera Curse is another. This represents pure terror of warfare. Mortarion is going to be really good at just being in the Force, particularly in hellish zones, planets that are naturally toxic to humanity, and even to other Astartes. The Death Guard will be led into battle by Mortarion. That's where Mortarion goes. That's what he does. He's also going to be really good at fighting off Xenos threats that maybe can survive in such atmospheres and create purpose atmospheres like that to fight against the Imperium. All of a sudden, Mortarion shows up. They wade through it. They just deal with it. They either don't feel it or they just endure it and they destroy the enemy that way and move on. A good example could be Necrons. Necrons might try to purge organics, and they may unleash toxins and phages and the like. There's a chance that the Death Guard will be, or the Death Guard and the Mortarion will be the best chance to combat that on the ground in such a manner. Another good force that they'd be useful to throw at is Tyranids. Mortarion's going to know how to purge life. That's what he knows. He is the Reaper. So all of his alchemical fire, baleful tech, all of his witch fires, not literally, because that's more psycho stuff, but his radiation tainted equipment, everything that is a huge Geneva Convention violation is going to be really crucial and really effective in dealing with the wholly organic nature of the Tyranid threat. Tyranid ships are all bioships. The mastery that Mortarion has is things that are just absolutely deadly to biology. So he's going to be very effective against Tyranids, for example, and other Xenos threats like them. If it's a orc-held world, an orc strong point world, his legion's going to be really good at cleansing that world and making it inhospitable. Yes, to humanity, but if you're not worried about colonizing, and if you just want to get rid of a WoW before it becomes a huge problem, or you want to basically thin the herd of an orc empire, Mortarion is going to know how to do it. Everybody is going to know how to kill orcs, sure, and they're going to try and purge the planet, but Mortarion's willing and accepted use of these sanctioned weapons, if you will, is going to guarantee the orc fungal problem, of which the orcs are basically a living fungus that when their spores hit the ground, orcs kind of burrow forth from the ground eventually and become a feral orc problem and join WAs and make their numbers huge. That's why when orcs touch down on a planet, they're really hard to actually scrub off of the planet. Mortarion is going to be able to do it. The planet's going to be all now, pretty worse off for it, but the orcs are not going to be a threat anymore. There's going to be no numbers to worry about on that planet. He's going to be able to push them back. He's going to be able to scour their rocks of life, their space hulks of life, other space hulks. They're just really going to be good in that regard. So what we're looking at is basically Mortarion's purpose would be the master of those forbidden weapons, you could say, the master of those arcane, alchemical, baleful weaponry. Other legions may make use of it. Mortarion is the one that's going to be pushing that tech forward. He's going to be that dark horse in the room that is called upon when you truly need one of the horsemen to just scour life from the planet, right? So he's not so much going to be an alien hunter purely, but he's going to definitely have that role in himself just by the sheer effectiveness of his preferred methodology of warfare against biological targets, right? So that plus his capability to live in, survive, and resist toxic environments, hellish zones where it's just inhospitable to standard humans and is really dangerous to Astartes, him and his legion can go forth and conquer. So not a legion or a Primarch really that's going to be paraded around as one of the poster children of the Emperor's Chosen, necessarily. It's more darker deeds, things that are whispered about in all corners of the galaxy, feared, rightly so. The Death Guard is one of those bringers of death and ruin where you understand their purpose, you see their effectiveness, but you're still scared to death as a standard Imperial Guard soldier or a standard civilian or whatever if you see them make planetfall where you are, because what horrors are we going to fight against and what horrors are they going to unleash type of deal. So just one of those dark Primarchs that's loyal in this, obviously, for this what if they're all loyal, but it's one of those Primarchs where he's got a dark reputation. He is remorseless. They are relentless. They are feared, and rightly so. So that's my thoughts for the purpose of Mortarion. It is one of those necessary evil Primarchs, right? You have outright butchering an entire populace. You got terror tactics for another legion. You got the cold calculus of warfare and death of the Iron Warriors and other legions. No, it's not all just those legions that become traitor. You also have the sheer aggression of the Blood Angels, the stealth ninja assassin tactics of the Raven Guard, the overwhelming literal fire of the Salamanders and so forth. So there's a lot of truly terrifying ways to conduct warfare and beat the enemy, but alchemical fire, phosphex, radiation, atomic, things that are just all around nasty and are uncaring of distinguishing wielder from enemy, that's the realm of the Death Guard, and that's truly terrifying for a lot of reasons. So we would see probably technology push forward in that regard, more launchers for phosphex stuff, not just on Terminators. You would probably see the equivalent of like a heavy flamer or a multi-melta, but converted up and changed to be some type of stream of radiation or something with phosphex or something else atomically. We would see a lot of truly nasty stuff. Anyways, that's my thoughts from Mortarion and the purpose that he has with his legion. Go into the most dangerous of environments to fight, purge all life with their baleful equipment, purge out space stations and the like, and combat biological Xenos threats such as Tyranids and Orcs pretty effectively. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for sticking through it. Any other question, comments, or requests, leave in the comment section. Share your thoughts on Mortarion, what his purpose might be in your eyes. And until next time, take it easy.